Hello and welcome to another Break for Assault unboxing video. I'm Lee Parnell. I'm recording from somewhere in the south of England, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Battlefront Sexton kit. Whilst the need for a support artillery weapon had been identified very early on with the British, it wasn't until the 1940s that the actual concept would be retried. The first attempt was marrying a 25 pounder with the Valentine chassis to create the Bishop. Whilst this worked, the turret suffered from being too cramped. The chassis was obviously a Valentine, which put some limitations on its ability to keep up with the actual main battle tanks of the time. And so it wasn't until the British gained some priests that they sort of had an indication of where it should go. The Sexton starts off as an attempt to create the British answer to the priest, marrying 25 pounder with the Canadian Ram chassis. The Ram being very similar to the M3 that the Priest was based on. Now, the Ram tank had already fallen out of favour, and this left many of its chassis that could be adapted to be Sextons. And then later Sextons would use the Canadian Grizzly, basically a M4A1 built by the Canadians. The Sextons saw service from D-Day onwards, and would also be used in the Italy theatre. It proved popular, although it was obviously as powerful as 105. It did standardise the logistics for the artillery section, and so when the 105 was phased out by the Commonwealth as its supplies really hurt the Americans, the Sexton would become the de facto standard self-propelled weapon for the armoured divisions going forward. Each armoured division would have at least one self-propelled battery, usually combined with a towed battery as well. For example, in the 11th Armoured, it was the 13th Royal Horse Artillery, the Honourable Artillery Company, who would provide for Sextons for that division. Its firepower was welcome. It could drop smoke as well, and it was generally on call to provide firepower as and when required. In Flames of War terms, what we get is a self-propelled 25 pounder with a modicum of armour protection. Whilst you're probably not going to be driving this up front to the enemy, it will protect you from enemy counter-artillery or some roaming armoured cars to an extent, and obviously you have the rate of fire to 25 pounder fire back at said armoured cars. It lacks the 50 cal of the Priest, which can be a issue because obviously that is also quite a good deterrent to armoured cars and also aircraft. But the 25 pounder itself is a decent artillery weapon, especially now it's firepower 4 in this edition of the rules. And what I find really interesting is effectively it's 2 points cheaper than a 25 pounder battery, whilst being substantially better in most scenarios. Now, as Battlefront have finally got around to producing a plastic kit, and not only does the plastic kit provide a Sexton, it also provides the Ram Kangaroo, and, in a surprise move, also the turret to make a Ram Kangaroo into an actual Ram tank. The Ram Kangaroo, I actually was using at Warfare and was enjoying immensely. It gives you a front armour 6, side armour 5 transport for your infantry that they can assault from. So you can drive up, get within 4 inches, and then the infantry just assault straight from the passenger compartment. All whilst machine gunners putting down some covering fire to keep the enemy's heads down. It's kind of a shame that the British didn't actually use this more in the actual armour divisions, where it might have been handy as a transport to keep up with the enemy, with the actual armour division's tanks. Instead, they were generally used to support the infantry divisions to give them effectively an assault carrier to get into combat. The Ram tank obviously is an interesting inclusion in that it never saw service as an actual gun tank. It saw service as an OP tank. A few of them saw service as flamethrower tanks, along with the actual Kangaroo adaptation of Badger. But as an actual cruiser tank, it would not see service. Now, the book has some background saying basically Americans are running on tanks, which was a thing. And to address this, the British basically re-equipped one of the Canadian divisions, its Armoured Recce Regiment, with Rams to free up the Shermans to equip the Americans with. It's, I mean, It's fine. I probably would have preferred to have seen it as like a little web list or something rather than taking up book space. But the model's cool. And it's actually surprisingly good in the game as well. Obviously, it's basically a Sherman with a 6-pounder. So you're sacrificing some firepower to get a higher anti-tank. But you're also gaining a 2+ remount because Canadians are just like that, I guess. They just really want to go and kill Nazis and not going to let their tank being hit stop them. Anyway, Battlefront Returns to send me a box of these, so let's open it up and take a look. Now, as we've just seen, this box is dense. You'll get effectively all the sprues you need to build the lower chassis with a Sexton, and there's effectively an extra sprue that has the upper half for a Kangaroo, plus a turret for the actual Ram version. We also get a pile of figures. Not only do we get 2 crew figures per Sexton, we also get 3 infantry per Kangaroo, plus the decals as well, which is always quite handy. I guess one thing I would like to see was actually it flipped a little, so you got 2 Kangaroo infantry and 3 crew for the Sexton. Having the guy sat at the controls of 25-pounder would have been quite nice. Looking at the actual Ram sprue first, you can see we actually get the little auxiliary turret. So this is very much a Ram Mark 1. Sorry, Ram Mark 2 early production. All that's quite good. The actual little machine gun turret was the same as the cupola on the Lee tank. They basically just took it and used it as an auxiliary turret. Get good level of detail. We've got little boards on the side that use to carry extra stowage. Obviously, all the tools on the engine deck are represented. Get the extinguishers on the upper deck. This being a later production, an early production Ram 2. It has a bump where once upon a time the actual side hatches would be. They actually ditched that as a feature going forward in the Sexton. One thing to note is it has its own rear plate as well. We can see on the actual engine, this is different to the one that's used with the Sexton. It's probably the only thing that really stops this being an easy conversion of having a common hull than a different upper, though it's not insurmountable. Looking at the actual Sexton sprue, we can see the actual upper hull is all one piece. Now, compared to its competition in the market, that makes for a much easier construction, but it does sacrifice some minor detail. For example, there's none of the steps on the side that effectively would be metal rungs. They're not modelled, and some of the detail, such as the actual side hatches, is very simplistic. On the other hand, the actual detail on the horizontal, such as the engine deck and extinguishers, is all well captured. There's also no internal detail because, again, by having it as a one-piece construction, you can't have like all the radio, aperture and that mounted as you see in the competition. However, it does make for a much quicker build, and you don't get the annoying join lines you do on, say, its competing kits. We get 2 options on the actual transmission cover: the early 3-piece riveted one and the later 1-piece cast one. Sorry, the early one's also cast, but it's cast in 3 sections. Single piece casting, let's go with that. That would be adopted later in manufacture. We only get the 1-track option, effectively, for the Grant style tracks that were actually used by the actual M3 and then adopted by the Ram. I know some of the other competing kits, you can also use the actual M4 style tracks that you get with the later production Sextons. Just taking a look at the crew next. As I said earlier, you effectively get 2 crew per Sexton and 3 crew per Kangaroo. Probably would like to say see that swapped around. I think having the seated gunner is always quite nice for Sexton, but he is out of sight, and I know some people probably wouldn't bother painting him in the first place. Also, would have been quite handy if, say, the second guy with hand up had been slightly different on some of the crews. So you have a load up, fire enough, that's fair enough, but I don't really need the same guy with hand up on each of the tanks. The Kangaroo crew are quite nice. You got a guy with a Sten, two guys with the Enfields. Represents the guys getting, just sitting up and looking out as they come up to the target. On the old resin kits, you used to get two guys sitting down plus a commander man in the 50 cal. But seeing as the modern Kangaroos don't seem to have a 50 cal option, that obviously is fairly moot. Decals are basically the standard Ally stars with the actual serial numbers that go on the side. Okay, that's enough looking at the sprues. Let's put this together and see how it looks. Here we have all the parts of the Sexton kit all cut out and stripped. We have a common hull and track system and some stowage. We have a choice of a early pattern and the late pattern cut off with a single piece casting. We're going to have all the Sexton parts and all the Ram and Kangaroo parts here. So first I'm going to do is build the lower hull. Again, we can see we have little guidelines so we can't get the tracks wrong around, which is always nice. So. Let's go. Now, our choice of backplate is going to be determined by either the Sexton or the Rams. I'm just going to put it in place for just to show you how he's going to go, because I'm eventually going to build this as a Sexton. Now, this piece is used to determine whether it's going to be a Ram or a Kangaroo. For a Ram, we'll just leave it without. For a Kangaroo, for the actual Ram itself, we put it in. Now, with the actual Kangaroo version, we can see got the drive shaft running through and some parts of the seating. So all we can do for the Kangaroo version, obviously not ideal here because I'm trying to keep this out building it entirely because I want to build this as a Sexton later. Get a little bit of glue in here. The auxiliary machine gun. Now I should note only builds a Ram early pattern Ram Mark II, so we don't have the ball mount and the really cast hole thing for the Ram Mark I. So we'll go on there. Obviously we glue it in place. I'm going to do it. Turret, standard Battlefront construction, lower plate, upper plate. Nothing too contentious here. Okay, so camera cut out a little bit there, but we then put on the mantle at place, put on the barrel, true thing, and it's done. Now obviously you can put your magnet in or your pin, and that builds the Ram. Okay, so that's building the Ram. The Sexton, again, we start from the same common hull, same common front plate, take the back plate off, use the Sexton back plate, There we go, on that goes. We then have the bottom plate. You can see here a detail for where the RAM storage is, plus the seats for the crew. You can see alignment notch goes in there. Tab set. All very straightforward. Like I say, it's a very quick building kit. Now, like I say, it'd be possible with a little bit of jiggery pokery to try and make this swappable, if you're so inclined to do that kind of thing. Go on, what's in there? Again, not gluing the 25 in quite yet, because I just want to work out posing later. But we shall just quickly glue on these side handles. So you can make that bit as a swappable bit. Let's say just have that drop in. But I do think you'll get a better result just by obviously building this up properly, which I will do later. Rather than having your model fall apart during the game. Yeah, there you go. And then we got, let's say, little cable storage. Well, quite a big one actually. It's quite it's a little over size for my liking. Goes in there. And then these fuel tanks fit to the back, like so and so. There we go. Nice little Sexton model. So final thoughts on the Sexton kit. I like that it has the option of the Ram Kangaroo in there, as well as the Sexton. That does lead to some compromises on the quality of the Sexton upper hull, along with its one allowing for its single piece manufacture. This is really a kind of personal preference. I kind of like having a bit more detail and having a slightly more annoying build. However, I am probably the minority on that. Battlefront have really gone for making this more of a wargame model, which will probably suit a lot more people. The compromises in detail aren't hugely significant. Obviously, you can't really see stuff like the radio inside or the side of the walls. The rungs on the outside are slightly more noticeable in their absence, as well as, like I say, the dumbed down access hatch on the side. But the actual substantial major detail is all present and looks the part. The inclusion of the RAM turret doesn't really, to my mind, sacrifice anything. I mean, you could probably use the space for those parts of the turret to have the actual crew on the sprue. I don't know why Battlefront don't do that more often. They always seem to prefer having a crew sprue separate, which sometimes makes sense if the tank only has a single user. Obviously, some Sherman kits you want to have both British, Russian, American crews on, so having a crew on the sprue doesn't make sense there. But with the actual Ram Kangaroo being a thing, and always being effectively either British or Canadian, both look the same until you paint them, I think they probably could have done that, had it on there without having the turret on. I guess someone felt that if they're going to make the rest of the Kangaroo, they might as well make the turret, and I can't fault them for that too much. It does look good. Hopefully the picture will pop up now. But I think most people are going to be buying this kit for the actual Kangaroo and Sexton options. Although I wouldn't be at all surprised if the actual Ram finds its fans in the actual sort of tournament meta, given it's relatively cheap and relatively hard hitting with its £6 late pattern 6-pounders. Sexton performs very well in game. I ran a section of them at Warfare, and that sort of on-tap artillery firepower worked quite nicely, whilst being an armoured vehicle obviously made it me less vulnerable. Less vulnerable to the actual enemy return fire. Not that I ever had to really put up with enemy trying to rush my Sextons, apart from my one game versus Luke where I was very much on the defensive. Ultimately, which kit you go with, this or the competition, is going to come down to your preference. This is a pricier kit. Obviously, you get crew, but you get crew in the other kit. You get decals, but the decals you have to wear. Do they actually make up for the delta in the kit price? I think what will sway a lot of people is like the fact this is a much simpler build. As much as I like the end product of the competition kit, the actual putting together those stupid multi-part noses and the 4-part holes, and then trying to get the fuel tanks on, which never seem to fit quite rightly on the back. It's a ball ache not everyone will enjoy, compared to this very simplistic construction you get with the Battlefront kit, which is literally, as you'll see in the videos, can be assembled in seconds. Well, seconds is probably overstating it, but certainly minutes. It didn't take long at all to get all 4 guns up and ready. I'll be building another 4 guns to join them. Ultimately, I think this is worth your time. If your stockist has a Battlefront kit in, then that's going to probably sway a lot of people. If you want a quick construction, that'll sway a lot of people. It's certainly worth it for the Rams, and I think it is possible to make it so it can do both jobs, with a little bit of clever engineering in where you stick the parts together. I think the only real convincing case for the competition is its price and being a better looking product if you go for the rigmarole of putting it all together. I might say that's going to have its advocates. Certainly that'd be me under most circumstances. But like I say, I don't think this Battlefront kit does itself any disfavours by being how it is, other than, like I say, the price. But 20% discount in most places, even that's less of a factor. As always, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe to keep track of our more content. I think this is my last video of the year. But next year we're taking a look at Hessian camo, and maybe I'll be getting some more of the VDV stuff on my own dime, so we can have a look at unboxing that as we go along. Join us over at Break for an Assault for the written articles, and over at Shoot and Scoop for the podcast. And as always, if you really enjoyed our work, then send us £1 a month at Patreon. Anyway, have a good Christmas, and I'll see you all on the other side of the year. Goodbye.